In labor for 40 hours before having an unplanned C-section, and I kind of want to share how it went for me because I know a lot of people are absolutely terrified to have a C-section, myself included. I was induced at 38 weeks because of pregnancy-related hypertension, and I knew that there was a risk that I was going to have a C-section, but I was told my risk was only like 30%. Throughout the course of the induction, nothing was really happening for me, so first gave me what I think is called Cytotec, and then they started Pitocin, and at the end of the day, just nothing was progressing my labor to a point that made it seem like I was going to be able to have the baby. So after about 24 hours of labor, I was given the option to potentially have a C-section. But again, I didn't want to do that because I was terrified. So I decided to try again to restart labor and do another day of Cytotec, Pitocin, all that. It's a long story, but clearly it didn't work because I still ended up having a C-section. And truthfully, in hindsight, I really wish I had just done the C-section from the beginning because I seemed to want to do it the entire time because my baby was big. So from the moment that I finally agreed to do the C-section until I was holding my baby was literally like an hour. I honestly could not believe how quickly everything happened. So once I agreed to do the C-section, I had to have another bag of IVs put in me because I had already gotten an epidural for the natural delivery, and now I needed to have a spinal block, I think is what they call it, for a C-section. It took probably 15 minutes for that bag of IVs to go through, and after that they were literally pushing me into the operating room to start the surgery. Once I got in the operating room, there was an anesthesiologist who performed the spinal block or whatever they call that. I didn't feel anything. Maybe it's painful, but again, I had already had an epidural, so I don't know if that like blocked the pain or what, but totally painless. Then they started prepping my like abdomen and stuff for the surgery. They put a shield up in front of my face, like basically a cloth. And when I say in front of your face, it is like right in front of your face, like right here. They're basically trying to block everything from here down because they do have to like push on your upper abdomen to get the baby out. But once they had me all like prepped and anesthesiaed up and all that good stuff, then they let George come into the operating room. He said that when he walked in, the surgeon was literally already cutting me open. The anesthesiologist stands kind of behind the curtain with me, sort of walks me through what's happening without getting into too much detail because clearly I don't want to be sick. But she kind of just walks me through like the process and what's happening. And George said that he was like peeking, but couldn't watch it all the way just because he didn't want to pass out. The anesthesiologist had warned me that there would be a lot of pressure because you still have to like push the baby out of the small incision that they make. So she's like, you will feel that, but it's not going to hurt. So she warned me before that pressure was about to happen, but legitimately from the moment that George walked in and said that he had like made the first incision to him like holding the baby up out of me was like 10 minutes. And so then they took the baby over to like the baby station where they kind of like wipe him down and get his weight and check all his vitals and just make sure that he's good. Then once that happened, they gave him to George, and then George was able to bring him over to me to like cuddle as best I could. And obviously during this time they were working to like put everything back together for me and like sew everything back up. And then once I came out of the operating room, I went into like a recovery room where I was able to do like skin to skin with him and just cuddle with him and then try to get him to latch, like all the regular things that you would get to do with the baby. Now, right after the surgery, I was numb still from like basically my chest down, so I couldn't move my legs or do anything like that, but I did have control of my arms. I could hold the baby. Like mostly everything was pretty much normal. I just couldn't stand up. Do also have a catheter in at this point. Once I made sure that me and baby were good after recovery, we went to like a regular room where we would just continue to be observed for the next 48 hours. So the first night after my surgery ended at like 1:38 p.m. First night after my surgery, I still, for the most part, couldn't really feel my legs. I had to keep the catheter in until about 6 a.m. the next day. At that point, obviously, feeling had come back into my legs. I did also have an IV in, and they were administering pain medication through the IV. But as far as I understand, it was literally just ibuprofen and Tylenol intravenously. So for that first night, it did kind of suck because I couldn't like get up and get the baby myself. George had to like get up, get the baby, and bring him to me. But at 6 a.m. the next morning, the nurse came in, she removed the catheter, and she helped me get up out of bed. And from that point forward, like I have been able to walk as normal. Truthfully, I was shocked by how much I was able to do the very next day after having the surgery. Like I was able to pick the baby up, I was able to walk with him, really able to do like pretty much everything normally. Now I'm not gonna say I wasn't in pain. Clearly there was pain, but honestly it was a manageable amount of pain, and for me, I never had to take anything more than Tylenol and ibuprofen. But they do offer you a lot stronger medication than that, so if you find that your pain level is more, it's available. After they remove the catheter, there is a time frame with which you have to pee a certain amount so that they can make sure everything's working properly, and you'll have to like pee in a hat or whatever so that they can kind of check it. But for me, all that went fine. I was actually able to pee right after they removed my catheter. So I didn't have to get another catheter. And then I wasn't in the hospital any longer than I would have been had I delivered normally. I was still just in for 48 hours, which is the requirement at the hospital that I was at. I'm about a week and a half out from my surgery right now, and I probably haven't used any kind of pain medicine in like 3 or 4 days. Honestly, the recovery is so much easier than I expected. I had heard horror stories, but for me, it has not been that bad. In terms of the pain isn't even really coming from the incision. It's coming from like the muscles and just the fact that they were in there. Like, I don't even really know how to explain it, but all the pain was actually in my abdomen. Nothing related to the incision at all. All that to say, if you find out you're having a C-section, or if you are terrified you might have to have a C-section, it's really not that bad. I thought that I would be bedridden for a few weeks, not be able to like take care of my baby. None of that is the case. I was up and walking the very next day. Minimal pain. Like, honestly, I wish that I had just done the C-section sooner as opposed to trying for 40 hours to labor.